Everyone loves a comeback story, the injury, the setback, then the heroic return. But nobody talks about the middle, the months where nothing's happening, where you're forgotten, where the biggest thing you're fighting for is your own mind. Yes, today we're going to talk about injuries, but really, there's talking about this middle part is such a large part of what most people miss in life. So, Tom, taking you back to the start, help me paint a bit of a picture of who you were before your injury.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I was a very, very keen rugby player. So I played when I throughout school. I only started like 13, so I actually moved back from Germany. So my first love was football, and something ironic is fencing, to be honest, how crazy that is. But yeah, that's a story for another day. So played rugby from like 13, played at school and club, loved it. And I was very lucky to play for like the Warriors alongside that, and kind of went into university. And rugby pretty much like shaped everything from my friends, my family, trips and whatnot to the experiences and whatever. So rugby was kind of a massive part of my life. I was very active. I ran alongside it. The gym was important. And just kind of alluded to that. I've had injuries before, but there's something particular. And I mentioned the idea about before, there's one particular injury. And that injury you kind of referring to there was a kind of serious injury I suffered playing rugby out in Australia. And yeah, it was pretty life changing. I think the person I'm before and afters are actually quite different people. I think you mentioned that actually at the start about, that middle bit and, people learning to kind of live in that middle bit and it gets forgotten about. That's kind of where I'm living at the moment. I think, I'm sure we'll come on to, I haven't actually fully recovered from the injury yet. So actually a lot of perspective I'm having is from that middle bit. But I think in terms of who I was before and kind of who I am now, a lot more patient, I think. I think a lot more, I say a lot more slightly slowed down a lot more. I think before the injury, I was very constantly thinking about the next gym session, the next running session. I got to keep pushing harder as a back row forward for rugby. I've always been told to get bigger and stronger. So everything was about getting bigger, stronger and faster and that injury essentially just stopped everything. And I think, I'll talk on to be going through that change definitely made me a lot more. I think patience is the key word, but I think there's a lot more kind of within that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And again, looking at your history and your page is brilliant for this, for like mapping out your journey. Like you said, obviously no stranger to injury. Every athlete has their knocks and their injuries, especially in rugby. Whether we like it or not, our sport is there's a lot of that. And like looking at it, obviously you've had issues with your shoulders, like head knocks, concussions, issues with your knees, your feet. Then there's just general wear and tear. There's going to be bits in your back, bits in your hip, muscular bruises, cuts, all of that good stuff. So talk to me a little bit about, you've obviously played for Bath, one of the best teams in Super Rugby. You've been in like a really prestigious academy while it was still around for Worcester Warriors. And then obviously moving over to Australia to sign to play rugby. And I know that you said that you wanted to use rugby as a tool to travel, which fair play. Like I love the logic. That works very well in mine. But tell me a little bit about that kind of like decision to go over there. Where did that come from?
That's a good question. So as I said, I started at school and I always loved rugby when I played it. So because I lived in Germany, as I said, I never actually played the sport until about 12, 13. It's like I'd be playing with a rugby ball with my dad in the living room, knocking, 7 pounds into each other. Like it's surprisingly violent. Other than me, I've got an older and younger brother. So we're playing like knee rugby. So I kind of had my first proper exposure in at school. And I just fell in love straight away with it. And I think my kind of journey to that more elite side of things began at school. Now, I wasn't actually picked up initially until about 16, about to turn 17, when a coach came to me and went, mate, like, are you playing for the academy? And I went, oh, no. I never really thought about it because I've always been so like the team has always been like my absolute like priority. I never even really thought about those things. I think it sounds really like, neither. I never thought about it. But genuinely, I just loved playing in the team with my school. I love my school team. I love my Warriors Rugby Club, the team I played for. So I just enjoyed playing kind of casually, if you say. But then when it got to that under 16s, and I was lucky enough to, represent Worcester Warriors, as you said, when it was around, and travel through to the 18s, that's when it kind of became quite serious. And I think I definitely enjoyed it for a long period of time, especially going into university. That's when it really kind of took a step up. So kind of for those who don't know, so after academy, you kind of handful get signed. I think I knew I probably wasn't big enough or good enough to get signed. And I think that's not a self-deprecating thing. It's a genuine, honest. I kind of knew that, and I was very comfortable with that because I actually wanted to play at university. I really, really wanted to play at uni. I'd seen the Buck Super Rugby kind of tournament. I knew that's what I wanted to play in. And I knew that's the level I wanted to get to. And I'm also an August birthday. I'm born 28th of August. I'm like 4 days away from the year below. I know it's not that important, but I know if there's any other August kind of babies out there, we kind of understand the struggle that you're quite literally a year younger than everyone else playing rugby. So, I took a gap year to try and take a year out. Obviously, that was COVID. So that was cut short. And I had shoulder dislocation, so all kind of got cut short quite quickly. So yeah, went to university, and that's when it really kind of took a step up. And freshers in my first year, which again, for anyone out there, that's when my love of rugby probably peaked. I was probably playing some of my best rugby just because I loved what I was doing. This was in, so many of my best friends to this day are from that team, that freshers team at Bath. I absolutely loved them, an amazing time. And that kind of carried into second, third and fourth year, where the more serious Buck Super Rugby stuff came up. And I was very lucky to play, I think it was about 17 times for Bath in that tournament. And an amazing time. Some amazing memories winning down at Swansea in the pouring rain, and going to Hartbury. I was chatting actually before, from the hostility we received at that stadium. So yeah, it was amazing. I was very, very lucky to captain them, or be named co-captain, I should say, in the 2 games of my 4th year. As our main captain was actually away. Myself, I actually, one of my best friends who I live with, were named as co-captains for the first 2 games. So I was kind of the peak of my kind of rugby career. And I'm really proud to say that still is the kind of peak of my career. And then coming back to your question about when Australia came up, as I mentioned, I always wanted to travel and play rugby. I always wanted to do that. It's, because I knew that rugby would give me the chance to do that, whilst knowing that there was some financial security and there was some, a bit of purpose behind the traveling and new experiences, new people, all that kind of jazz. So yeah, kind of I got in contact with the coach, and then within 3-4 weeks, I was traveling out to Australia. But it's kind of when that happened was actually when kind of the injuries started. Now, as you mentioned, I've had injuries before. In fact, my 4th year, I only played 2 games in my 4th year. My last ever game of rugby was actually representing Bath as co-captain against Loughborough. Because I did my shoulder. On my other shoulder, I basically had shattered my labrum. I was told it wasn't too bad, but turns out it was held on to, it's like a clock face. It was held on to was torn from 12 till 6 o'clock and 6 till 9 o'clock. So it was held by the barest of threads. So I had that operated on, but there was something about, I was still in the team environment. And as all my closest friends played in the team. So we had a great time. I was still involved in the sessions. I used to be the T-boy. I've got videos of me dropping goals at half time. And I still, and ultimately I was still at university. I was still living with my friends again, who all were rugby. So we all had the same kind of routines. And, we all went to the gym at the same time. On the weekend, we go to the pub together and all those kind of things. So I was still very involved. But that trip to Australia, that actually, I never actually represented the club, actually suffered a pretty freak training accident. I'll come on to in a second. After only 3 weeks of being in the country. And to say that kind of turned my world upside down is almost a bit of an understatement, to be honest. I think, so it's called a Lisfranc fracture. Again, I'm not that medically cued up. I didn't study that, but basically, so you have your metacarpals in your hand and your metatarsals in your feet. They're very similar, but I essentially ripped the ligament so hard in a breakdown that the bone moved and it's got displaced. It's essentially dislocated a bone in your foot, essentially, is what it is. And unfortunately, obviously, I was in Australia, very little support network. I mean, the club were great trying to help me, but there's actually limited things they could even do. No job, which actually ended up being helpful because I couldn't even commit anyway on my own, literally on the other side of the world. And for the first time, the injury kind of hit me. Because it was a way bigger injury, even bigger than my shoulder dislocations and whatnot. But this one just felt different. And you mentioned the page, and I really appreciate you saying that about it. It's where kind of Rebuild kind of came from, was that was that experience of being by myself, on my own, scared, frustrated, constantly told, constantly misdiagnosed. I mean, I read a stat that Lisfranc fractures are misdiagnosed about 35% of the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure and I don't know how true that is, but if it's from a medical journal, so I don't know which one it is, but I can't cite my sources, but I remember reading that and I can see it. So I was ignored. I went to the Australian ER, put my foot down. Oh, so I didn't put my foot down. Is that if you'd x-rayed my foot normally, nothing wrong with it. As soon as you get a touch of pressure, it would just open up like that. But they didn't really, they saw it was plantar fasciitis. Now, anyone who knows anything about physiology, that's not what it is. Absolutely not. The only reason I had pain underneath was because of just how bad the swelling was. So yeah, it was quite very life-changing. Eventually I had to come back about 7 months later to have surgery. I was finally told by English surgeon, nothing against the Australian system necessarily, but I was ignored, which is very hard. I'm sure we can come on to, but yeah, so I had all those things. So Australia has quite mixed feelings. Because I went from the peak of signing my first contract, over the moon. I earned it through my playing at Bath, even though I was injured a lot of the time, but it meant that when I was fit, I played. And I was incredibly proud of that. So it meant I could go to Australia, and then next thing you know, kind of whole world kind of turned upside down.
Yeah. And I think obviously with your situation, like if you were at home, that's a very different kettle of fish. And I think what makes that so much more challenging is to do with that level of whether you did that injury at home or on the other side of the world or anywhere, is kind of, like you said, it is the context. And I think that's what I really wanted to drum home with people before we kind of get into your actual injury itself. That's what I really wanted to drum home for people was okay, this is the context. You weren't, it's not if you did it today, living at home, you've got that support
different
network,
story.
friends, family that can take you to appointments, they can do this, they can do that. And
yeah,
for its faults, like the NHS,
absolutely,
it serves a purpose, doesn't it? But when you're in that foreign country, then you've also got the level of insurance and how does it work with visas? What happens if your visa runs out? Complication of visas. I've spoken to a couple of people who spoke on the podcast and also in personal life around the complexities around that. That's not an easy topic at all. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to drum home as well. And it wasn't until I Googled your what a Lisfranc fracture is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and you fracture and I'm like, okay, well, there's clearly some complexity. And I looked into it more and more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, rather you than me, mate, but
yeah, no, honestly, I don't.
It is one of those. It means I'm talking about now. My toes under the table, held up.
Even I don't like it now.
Amazing, man. I think one of the biggest things here is to kind of understand. You come home and have that surgery. Talk to me about what that was like. Was it any because even traveling that distance, traveling for 24 hours, how is that with that level of injury? Given obviously there's a 7-month time frame between obviously you doing the injury and coming home.
Yeah.
What complications did that add into the equation?
It's funny you say that because it's changed a lot. And I think if I could do it all again, there are a lot of things I would have changed. And it's because what happened was, so you mentioned you looked into Lisfranc. So essentially the way you solve a Lisfranc fracture or Lisfranc, whatever it's called, is there's two ways. You either do something called an ORIF, which is over the top, plate it down, and kind of bolt it from the top, or you do something called a fusion, which is, I say stronger, but it's bolted in. There's no way that's moving. It literally can't move unless you break it again. But obviously one has greater implications for your foot movement and your flexibility and whatever than the other. But the important caveat to all of this is that an ORIF, generally speaking, and I'm no doctor, but every single medical journal I've seen says this, and I do, and if people have the same injury, please do look it up. They're only successful, the ORIF, over the top, if it's done within a certain time frame. Generally speaking, what I've seen, it's a maximum of 4 weeks. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it's all to do with the way the joint reacts, the way it heals initially, reducing the risk of arthritis essentially, and whether the joint works. Now, because I was constantly constantly misdiagnosed. And I mean, multiple physios and doctors, just me trying to explain, like, genuinely, this is awful. I don't know whether I underplayed my pain when I was there because of rugby. And this is, I mean, something to come on to in a second, but you are taught to, if you don't show your weakness and do that kind of stuff. I don't know whether that crept in a little bit, but essentially 7 months down the line, I had the ORIF surgery done. Now, unfortunately, fast forward till, what's this, April? April now. That's what, 7 months later, 5-6 months later, I had to have another surgery in February, essentially to undo what had been done, for the simple fact that the RF didn't work. And coming back to your question, coming home was strange because I didn't want to leave, because despite everything, I was really proud of myself. I genuinely managed to have a really good time. I met some amazing people through the club, but also through coaching alongside that at the school there. Some amazing people, saw some amazing things. I was lucky enough to see the British Lions play in Melbourne for that second test, which was amazing. And that's a memory I'll never forget. But the undertone to everything was that, mate, you're in a real bad spot here. Like, you need to get this, can't go on. So I came home, and I think relief of getting the surgery done was definitely one thing, but not to go into too much detail. But unfortunately, alongside that, I was developing symptoms on my other foot as well. But just because of the overloadingness, I was developing nerve problems. I was developing tendon issues, and there was just a lot of pain going on. And I think I found that really exhausting, to be completely honest. I think that the amount of time I've been in pain was really hard. And that was back in September, let alone now. But it's like, so I was happy to have the surgery done. Look, I had 6 weeks on my bed, literally just next to me here, back in my old childhood bedroom. I was on blood thinners for 6 weeks. And for those who don't know, you kind of injecting yourself, because I had a long haul flight, as you said. But going from that high of Australia, I mean, obviously the bubble was burst quite quickly. Did it feel like a weakness coming home? No, because I knew it had to be done. I think what's been so hard is actually just how long this has now affected my life. And obviously some good has come from it, like the sense that the rebuild pages that are going to start to help people has started. But, if I can think back to September now, I think, wow, like, I don't know if he was aware of just how much more this was actually going to snowball.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like, like I said, I'm no athlete, and I've never had a level of injuries. Don't get me wrong, I've had my bumps and scrapes along the way. So like, a lot of what you say can very much translate over in to day to day. And this is one massive thing that I wanted to drill home with the episode as well, was like, this is almost like a kind of really interesting case study, because it's, you can remove the injury with
100%.
any negative.
I know, yeah.
Like, it's not exclusively just about what you've done to your foot. That could be about a situation in life.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we're about to get onto, like this kind of like middle part, and, what it is essentially. Stuff around identity change is humongous. And like, you almost think that, okay, well, I'll come home and then that'll solve the problem. But I think, I mean, certainly from a life point of view, like one thing very, very rarely solves many.
Yeah.
But like, with your sort of thing, like, it's as shit as that felt at the time of like, he doesn't know what he's got to go through, like, off the back of that. There is also that double-edged sword of, oh, actually, what good is that end going to do in the long run? Like, what's that going to teach you as a character? And I'll share a quote with you after this, because I want to keep moving with the episode, but I'll share it with you once we're done, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
and you'll resonate with it a little bit. So, we bring it up to now. So, what does, in terms of recovery, in terms of where you're at right here, right now, where are you at with from an injury point of view, physically?
Yeah. So right now, I had 2 surgeries on my foot so far. Essentially, I need to have the fusion done, essentially. So I need to have the other operation done, which hopefully will be a more solid base, done. It's going to bring its own challenges, but as you kind of just alluded to there, that I'm hoping that I will be in a position to be better prepared. And I think that, and I'll come on to in a second about that sense of identity, and it's so important. And I love how you mentioned that you can replace this with something else. It could be the loss of a family member. It could be something else. And I think that sense of kind of grief that I've experienced the last year. Definitely we'll touch on it in a second. It's amazing how much you kind of learn from that. And I think how much these things can translate into other aspects of your life. So right now I'm waiting for the surgery, or to have the confirmation to have the surgery. I'm basically, the swelling from the previous surgery is all but gone down. We're going to wait and see what joints need to be fused, and hopefully we'll get a plan going from there. That's the right foot, the Listerine foot. I've actually developed some pretty bad problems on the other foot as well, just because of the sheer amount of time that I've been, overloading feet and whatnot. So I'm waiting to have kind of some more diagnostics done on the other foot as well. So kind of eliminating things as we get it. Not remotely recovered, but I'm now at a point, hopefully, where the pieces are on the board. It's just about, right, how can I protect my mental health now so that we can start slowly getting back, rather than just thinking, right, I'm not better. Why aren't I better yet?
Yeah. And I've always had that kind of put to me as like the gap. Have you ever read or heard of the gap versus the game?
Now you say the gap versus the game, I feel like I've heard, I haven't read it personally, but I feel like I must have heard that.
It's one of those ones which, if you have a spare credit on Audible or something along those lines, like listen, it's genuinely, it's like
Audible,
and you can whiz through it. But like, it's one of those things which is very much like fundamentally quite a quick listen. It's very in and out. But the point is about, like, you can look at how far you've got to go till finish line. But then there's also a level of that where, like, it is a gap because you don't know what's in between there. I could be objectively, you could be on the Grand Canyon and you can look over to the other side and be like, well, that's not that far. Are you going to jump it now? To get there, you have to go the long way around. But also, the gain is the opposite. It's looking the other way and be like, okay, well, how far have I come? And
that's so interesting. Yeah.
How would I approach if I was, presented with the same issue again, which you're in a very weird, twisted situation. You kind that you're going to have to go through that situation again. And like, that's what I love about you, is where you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do to make it better. This is how I'm going to be better. Because ultimately, that's the part that we can control. Operations happen, situations happen. Like, let's keep it nice and broad. Fundamentally, the only thing that can really, really be controlled is what how you feel, how you react, what you kind of put in, and how you show up. So I think that's definitely the right way to approach it.
Actually, just on that, sorry, just before you next thing, it's interesting that, because that control is it's just so important. And I think that if you kind of think back to where I was, particularly when I was in Australia, and I think look, I think it was partly because I kept getting told it would get better. I think that is a big part of it. I'm not going to dismiss that side of things. I know there was a big part that I think I was misinformed. But there was also another part of this where in hindsight, the sense of control that I felt so out of control of everything that was going on. I just felt like I was trying to get through days. I was, in Australia, I was limping everywhere. I was on crutches and I was limping, and things were snowballing, and it was, okay, now you can't do this, now you can't do that. And I think even especially when I first came back after the operation, I remember, so I have downstairs, my dad's bought these little weights. Like, it's not cool. It's a gym. It's not a gym. It's a little study room with a mat, and there's a few little dumbbells and where I do core and stretching. But there's some 25k dumbbells down there. And I remember being on my bed, get restless, just like, I need to be able to do something. I need to be able to help progress some way. This idea that I need to get better, like get straight back on the horse. And basically the cast goes into a boot. You kind of cut the cast in half, goes to a boot. And I got down there. But all that happened was, as soon as I went down there, I felt worse about my situation, because all I was trying to do was push harder, but my body was telling me no. My body was literally saying, you can't do this right now. You're on blood thinners. Your foot needs to be elevated. You cannot do some seated bench press. You can't do your bicep curls. You have to rest. Because so much of what I was seeing on social media, that's another big reason why I love what you do, and why what I love, I'm so passionate about with the project that I'm working on, is that so much of social media tells you to do that. And I think, and then you come back, like idea of control, you just mentioned that. It's like, oh, well, you've got to push harder, then you've got to keep doing more. And it's like, well, all that did was make me feel more out of control about what was going on, because all of a sudden I tried to do that. It hasn't worked. And all I've done is, rather than going, right, I'm going to give myself the space to get better. I'm going to relax. I am going to watch that TV show. I am, I'm going to have that chocolate bar, because right in that moment, it was important to me to have it. I needed to slow down and be patient, like we said earlier. But all I could see on social media was this pushing harder and a kind of that control thing. And the reason I interrupted you is because I spoke to my friend who does kind of high rocks, the top end of high rocks, and I think words professionally. I'm not quite sure what the word is. Anyway, the top level of high rocks, and he spoke to me about it, and he went, well, when he recovered from a stress fracture, he was like, if he could just think of what is the best decision that I can do right now for my body is what I'm going to do. And also, mention this about life and things like that. I mean, this can apply to relationship, you can apply to breakups, you can apply to, setbacks. It's like him saying that, what is right today, right now, what is something that you can do to benefit your injury? It might be do nothing, but as long as it's not going to make it worse, that's what you need to do. And I thought it was worth sharing. So they really kind of stuck with me since.
Yeah, definitely. And it's almost like we hear a lot of stuff about journaling. And I do think, and I wouldn't be sat here today without that level of introspection. And it's something that I, to be fair, can probably back myself to, is the most optimal way of doing it, pen and paper or whatever. Yeah, definitely. But also in my head, I'm a bit like, I know I can ask myself these questions. And having these sort of questions, like you said there, what's the best next move for me right here, right now? Like all things considered, fantastic question. That's I would like class that as a journaling.
That's so interesting. I really thought about it. Yeah.
And it's just doing it live. Like even sometimes, maybe it's something to consider moving forward, or maybe it's maybe it's not. As if I'm not.
No, for sure. Yeah, no.
But one thing that I always say, like I look at it here of like, how am I contributing to the situation? Like if I'm causing more stress, more pain, more suffering for no, that doesn't have to be physical. Very rarely is that physical. It's usually mentally. How much of that am I causing myself by just carrying on the way I am? It's those little things, kind of having those in your pocket to pull out and be like, bam, okay, let's approach this differently. Amazing, mate. One thing that I really want to kind of crack into now, and it's one of the biggest challenges, kind of looking a little bit broader to start off with, and then we'll come back down to obviously your situation. One of the biggest challenges I see people talking about online. I also talk to people a lot about it on the podcast, but also kind of just from like day-to-day conversation. One of the biggest challenges that I see people facing is this idea of identity change. Now, there's clearly been a lot of identity change that you've had to go through over the last year or so. And I think there's two camps here. You either will avoid it violently, by all means necessary, or you struggle with it massively. That's kind of the two extremes and the two camps. And I think there probably is this happy medium somewhere, but there's two really big camps in the world of identity changes and the way I see it. Because I know so many people would not do something purely through the fear, the anxiety, the almost like lack of skills to deal with that level of identity change. But on the other side, there's people who are forced into it that really, really struggle. Now, I know from my point of view, when I started to like sort of like change and trying to move through careers, for example, I knew that I was going to have to go through a level of identity change. Fuck me, was I not ready to deal with it? I thought I had some skills. Cool. No, you don't, boy. You don't know anything about the world. You don't know anything about yourself. And this is where you're going to get into the pits and learn it, essentially. Like when your thing has been taken away, how do you figure out who you actually are?
That's honestly such a good question. And I'm kind of got the cogs going in my head because it's something that I'm still figuring out, I think.
And just to interrupt on that as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's like, there's such a pressure and often imposed by ourselves that we have to have an answer when we don't. Like,
that's interesting.
It's your stuff. Like, I can relate to. Again, it's not challenging my identity as an athlete. So I'm like, because I don't think I'm going to be any one of them anytime soon. As much as I'm sure I would love to be. Like who are you? What do you?
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's okay to kind of be in that like discovery phase, and to try things and to be figuring it out, because like I feel that will. I know from my point of view, I am convinced that will serve me well in the long run. as I'm sure kind of it's similar situation for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny you say that because actually my answer, I'm thinking now, it's like, I'm still not sure. But more than anything, I think going on this journey and like just having so many setbacks, it kind of again and again, and like in the realm of the physical self for that, it's like that question has very much been forced on me. And it's not something that's come, it hasn't been something that's crept up. It was, to be honest with you, it was something that kind of came up like that. It surprised me by how quickly I had to kind of, it's a great question. I look around like to picture it, and I kind of try and talk to you about this as well. It's you know, Inside Out, that Pixar film,
Yeah.
the old Pixar. I say old Pixar film. It doesn't feel that old to me, but it is now. It's an old Pixar film. So the idea that the identity was like it was represented in islands in the film, and like you follow these 5 emotions, and they go around, and each part of this main character's brain had like an island. So each part of the personality and like the family bit, the friendship bit, the activities, but whatever, and like. When I was kind of sitting on my bed, and it's taken a long time just to kind of realize this, I maybe didn't realize just how important that sport island was to like my sense of self. I think, you know, my friendship group is very, very rugby heavy. But what's nice now is that I say nice, I'm not the only one who's gone through this. There's boys, unfortunately, who are really struggling with concussion symptoms. There are boys who had hip replacements. Like, you know what it's like with rugby. It's brutal. But we still love the game. We still love the game because it meant that much to us. But anyway, the idea that we all were in a similar boat. But I think kind of learning who you are without your sport is, I think, scary, to be honest. I think more than anything. And I don't think I'd rather it be addressed as, you know, yeah, this is scary. Like I'm not going to shy away from it. It is scary. I think the more I try to fight initially, like, like, you know, I alluded to earlier, I'm going to be back. I'm going to get back on the field. When like my body was telling me no, not only did I have symptoms on my bad foot, I was developing symptoms on my other foot. Again, not the same, but different. But equally, like my body was telling me something. The fact that I'd had so many injuries over the last however long. And look, I would never doubt anyone for trying to get back to the sport they love. Never, ever, because I know how important it is. But for me, it was that realization that, okay, I'm out of control here. 1, I'm not accepting what's going on. 2, and I'm just dying anything to keep rugby as part of who I was, especially the playing side. Because the coaching, I is a way, like, you know, stay involved in the game, but fundamentally I wanted to play. And I think it took a lot. It's still taking time now, but I think more and more I'm trying to just, you know, right now it's not even a question of whether it can, like it could be part of my identity. It's not. It's like the fact of the matter is, I'm not Tom the rugby player at the moment, but there's a lot more to Tom than being a rugby player. And, you know, I think it's learning that, okay, the more I can accept what's going on, the more I can accept that, okay, I am a bit broken right now. It's hard. There are going to be some really hard days. Yeah, there's going to be tears. There's going to be like, it's really hard. And look, watching people play, especially those games when you could be playing, are actually worse than the games than when you know you can, like, God, if I watch England play, but I don't want to watch them at the moment, but if I want to watch England play, it's like, yeah, fine, whatever. But then I watch my club team play. I want more than anything to be back out there. But like, I found that the more I've tried, and look, it doesn't happen overnight at all. I'm not sitting here pretending that this is a linear process. But the idea, the more I've tried to accept what's gone on around me, the more I've understood that grief and that, yeah, I have lost something. I've lost that identity of who I was. And like, someone described it to me once as this idea that, okay, rather than picturing identity loss and grief as this like fist that, like, you know, you open your palm down, you've lost something. It was the idea. Someone explained it to me that if you picture identity and identity loss and grief as like an open palm, so that when you open it and lose it, you're not losing something. You're kind of just giving space for something else to grow there. And there's something about that quote that like really hit me. And I was like, wow, that, you know, if Tom does come back and play rugby, very, very unlikely. In fact, it's not going to happen. But if I did, it's a choice that I've made like willingly. It's a deliberate choice. But I know I'm very into my music. I love my piano and my guitar. I've put all my effort into that. And all of a sudden I'm Tom who loves music. And, you know, I massive fan of TV and film. And it's just, there's more to me than just this injury. I really love the idea that I'm not letting go of the rugby players. I'm still him. I've still got all the memories. I've got a few boonies behind me from my like rugby journey and stuff. I'm still incredibly proud of what I've achieved. But that means that when I look forward, I'm looking forward in a happy way, okay, well, what's next for me, rather than oh God, I'd do anything to be back to where I was before. And now look, I'm not naive enough to sit here and say I don't have those days. Of course I do. I still have those days, as I just mentioned. But I think the idea of like identity is so different for every person. But I found for me what really helps is that idea that I haven't lost something I'm kind of giving myself space to grow, so that when the injuries are hard, and honestly, when the pain's there and it's just exhausting of constantly scanning your body, and this is just obviously my situation for recovery, but it can apply to lots of other things, whether it's a job and whatnot. It's like you haven't lost that. You're just kind of giving space for something else to grow. And that really stuck with me. And it's something I really try and share with others.
Yeah, mate. And amazing. And it's so like, and I think it kind of, as we start to move into like this kind of the idea of being forced to slow down, and it's something that I think there's so much value in for people, but it's just not like it has to be forced upon most people. And as we start to go into that, like I don't think you get that level of kind of insight and introspection without that. And I want to just pull one of your quotes that you had in one of your
Yeah, for sure.
One of my feel like nothing has changed physically, so much has changed mentally. I'm learning how to sit with uncertainty. I'm learning how to slow down. I'm learning that progress isn't always visible, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. And maybe it's not about getting back to how I was before, but becoming someone who can handle what's next. And I think that's perfect to kind of pop in there. And when I was watching some of your reels and some of your videos, I'm just like, that is perfect and fits so well. So as we kind of start to move forward a little bit, how do you view yourself now after being forced into this period of slowing down?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm so glad you kind of pulled that quote, and it's kind of what underpins everything I want to do and how I kind of see the world now. It's like, like as much as I've had these injuries, I've had people who messaged me having been in car crashes, and they didn't control that. These are things that have happened. And look, the best one in the world, no one gets injured. But unfortunately, in my realm of dialogue, discourse, that does happen. And, like you mentioned there, and how the idea of how I view myself now, I think I'm two very different people, to be honest. As we kind of alluded to earlier, the idea that before my identity look, I still had my love of music and films and all the other things, but it's the idea that ultimately rugby was the banker. Rugby was the one that, I've missed things for my shoulder, and I'd missed things for concussions, but I knew that I loved rugby and I wanted to play rugby, and sport was who I was. I was the sporty one. I had sporty friends. My brother and I, younger brother, would go to the nets. My older brother and I would go and, try rugby ball around. Everything was about activity and sport. And I remember we actually chatted at uni once. I remember we rushed to get a gym session in, and then we felt good about ourselves. I was like, well, hang on a minute. My self-worth is now attached to my ability to do some lap pull downs. And it hasn't happened overnight. And I think in hindsight, especially the way I was at uni and how hard we trained and how we played, and that if I had a bad game and a bad gym, I'd be moody. But then even though something might go well academically or in my personal life or in a relationship or friendship, that didn't matter to me. And look, it's an ongoing process. I'm not going to really sit here and say I'm the finished article at all. I've still got, as you mentioned earlier, these, still those really bad days, the days when I miss things, the days when I miss who I was before. Absolutely. But I also know that I'm looking back at myself, I know I've gained a sense of perspective because, as you say, it was forced on me. Now, I wouldn't wish the situation in the world. I'm sure I know other people have far worse situations. And I think it's that as much as I wouldn't force it upon myself, I'm hoping that one day I can look back and go, that's what he learned. I'm so glad he went through that. Not the pain, not the exhaustion, but just the perspective shifts that I've had. And I think one of which I'm sure we'll discuss, is the social media. And I think that now, look, it's such an easy thing for me to sit here and say, social media is bad, but it's more so like another step further. Because I remember being on my bed and thinking, well, why is social media bad? What is it about social media that I don't like? Because look, I used to love the David Goggins edits. I used to love the carrying the boats and the logs and the, locking in culture. But then there was something about that all of a sudden it took such a kind of traumatic event or traumatic event to my body to go, this isn't right. This isn't real life. This isn't the way it works. And that, someone said to me once that the exceptional has now become the expected. And you talk about this idea, how I see myself now. Tom from before would have gone, yeah, but you got to push harder. You keep working, do that extra rep, do double sessions. The Tom now would go, right, just slow down. Okay. Less is more. If all you can do during the week is 3 swimming sessions or some stretching and some rehab, or if you can do some uppers, become any of those, then you do that. You find out what you can do and you go with it. And of course, you work as hard as you, obviously, of course we want to work hard. I don't think anyone's doubting that. I think most people want to be able to work hard and, be healthy. But there's something about that quote that really stuck with me. And in the case of identity, it's amazing how I would have perceived that in two different ways. I think that it's easy to sit here and say, oh, but I'm a changed person. But it's more that I know I've had to change because it's been forced on me. And that it's one of those, so even back to September, and I can openly reflect and say I got it wrong in my first post-surgery. I think if I could do that again into that identity, what would I do? I would allow myself to just slow down. I'd really just give myself that permission that, Tom, your self-worth is not tied to your ability to do some dumbbell bench presses downstairs, to think that your uppers are still going and keep them ticking over. When, hang on a minute here, Tom, just stop. Just, goodness sake, mate, like your body's already gone through enough. This exceptional, because all you see on social media, and it's something I do stand by quite strongly on my page, and I will do stand very by this idea that I think it's really damaging. I think some parts of social media can be really, really damaging for people. And I think that it's not necessarily the influencers themselves, but I think that when you see people posting ridiculous 10Ks, there's no such thing as a gentle jog anymore. Everything has to be on Strava. Everything has to be metrics, and that it's a currency of success and value related to things that are different for each person. That one running the 10K might have never had an injury in their life, but they might have something in their personal life we don't know about. We don't know. We just don't know. And I think that that's something that I feel very strongly about. And it reminds me a lot, I speak about it sometimes, of the body image issues that arose when Instagram first came out, and obviously affected boys and girls. I know it had a very strong impact on the girls, especially that these are the unrealistic expectations. And now I'm looking at it from an injury perspective, and I'm linking it to the sense of identity, that all I could see was people following an injury back in the gym, doing a single leg rowing machines, doing the seated skier. And look, brilliant. For them, they can do that. But all it made me feel was even worse about my own recovery, even though my situation was so radically different from theirs. I didn't even know what was going on. They might have had a completely different injury, different situation, different help, different support. And then, my identity now, I can look at that and go, okay, I want to use people to inspire me. And that, I know I'm more than this. Okay, even if I can't do that, I'm making progress, reloading the guitar, learning the piano, spending time with friends and learning new skills, learning how to post on social media. But like the Tom from before, even as so much as about 5 to 6 months ago, would have gone, oh, I've got to do that. I've got to get back in the gym quicker. So I know I've gone quite a roundabout way of saying that, but it's more the idea that I'm willing to slow down because I know that, as we mentioned earlier, that this is the right thing for my body at this time. And ultimately, the best way to get back, from my understanding, is that because injuries are so non-linear and life is so non-linear, okay, what works for one day might not work the next day. So each day, let's look, okay, what is one thing that I can do right now to help my recovery, so that the next day I can look back and go, yeah, we made the right decision then. So if it's a bad day, pain spikes, have a breakup the next day, I don't know, something is that you're prepared to make the right decision, but also know that if you need to slow down, you can do.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way that I've had it explained to me as well is that this idea of like no 0 days. So imagine that you've got like a scale of like plus, like -10, +10, zeros in the middle. And obviously you don't want to be going out of your way to negatively impact your life, obviously. But then you also then can swing that back the other way. Well, over this way, now, like I said, it sounds like you wanted to go for those like +10s as much as possible. And don't get me wrong, there'll be 10 days where, a +10 will feel extremely easy and is like exactly what you need to do. But then other days, well, actually, what is that like +1? And could that almost be not, like in your case, especially, could that not be doing anything?
Yeah.
Like you said there about, well, actually, I don't need to go down stairs to try and move the dumbbells, hit uppers. Like, let's focus on, recovering, whether that's, just sit, chill, have a minute, or is that, I need to get on my, guitar or, or I'm a friend, or even if it's, cool.
Play Pokemon on your DS, I don't know, anything just to, I agree with you.
That could be, even if that's a +1, that's still better than, because you could have done, just using the example of going downstairs to use your dumbbells that you were saying. Well, what if you tripped and you knocked it and then damaged the damaged like let's say the scaffolding essentially on your,
100%.
what have you
That's
done
a good way of
that for?
describing it.
Because it's, there's a high likelihood that could happen. So I think, like you said, it is definitely managing that, and don't let it be a 0 or a minus, but bloody hell, a +1 is significantly better than a 0 or a takeaway.
And just on that quickly, I think that again, I'm speaking more to injury recovery here, but I also know this can apply elsewhere. It's the idea that I celebrate the good, manage the bad. And it's that there's going to be bad days. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. There are days, look, I mean, I still get them. The days when you're up at 1 a.m. crying because your foot's looking black and blue and you're in so much pain you can't get to sleep. Or let's say going through an ACL recovery, you get better, but then it feels like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And even in my current situation, and look, I'm not saying remotely that this happens every day, but it's gone on for so long. But I know that I'm in a different spot now to the one I was in last year. And the days when I get caught up thinking about, well, why has this happened? It's gone on for so long. Why didn't that change? I wish that could have happened. It's like, look, I'd do anything to change them. But the fact is I can't. And the only thing I can do is kind of focus on, okay, again, we mentioned how can we improve, but again, it's kind of redefining what that looks like. That doesn't mean that every day you get better and every day your foot gets less painful. Every day for me, my calf raises slightly better. Some days it might feel worse, but then it's okay, manage the bad, then we go up again. And it's like, we're not every step back means you're failing. And I think that, especially taking in the right context, because some people might go, it's a negative mindset. It's not a negative mindset, especially when you've been in those trenches and you kind of understand of just how hard this actually can be. It's really not negative. Actually, it's kind of being honest with yourself and, recognizing where you are, meeting yourself where you are and going, okay, bad day today. We're not going to make it worse. We're going to, have those tears, be upset, be frustrated, be annoyed. But then that means that you've dealt with it. We can deal with it. And then when the opportunity comes, we celebrate the good as well. And I remember someone told me the idea of learning to live in the spaces between moments. And it's that, okay, I can't stop myself from living with the idea that I'll only be happy in doing things when I'm better. Because that it works for about 3 weeks. So I don't know, a certain amount of time, and then it doesn't work. And obviously I'm speaking about injuries here, but it can be about anything really. The more I can kind of give myself permission to be happy in between the moments, like you mentioned about identity, allow myself to be happy when I don't feel like myself, but I know I'm making as many correct decisions as I can towards being who I want to be again. And the idea of, allowing that new stuff to grow, it's like, well, the more I can do that, the more trust I build back and the more sense of myself I feel.
Definitely, mate. There's such an element of, and it's so easy and like almost flippant to say it, of like, don't fight it. But like, I think certainly for me, and when going for identity change, in various different guises, I think the fight with reality you have is like causes so much more unnecessary stress, hassle, upset, mental turbulence, I like to call it, because it feels very bumpy.
Yeah.
But the issue with fighting with reality, and nobody that's listening can turn around and say, well, actually, I don't do that. Bullshit. There's going to be levels of your life somewhere that you unfortunately fight with reality. The issue with fighting with reality, this is what I'm saying, is like almost like letting it happen. Reality doesn't lose. It's never lost ever. So you need to, work within the confines that you've got. Don't get me wrong. And that's not me saying don't bother and give up, because what's the fucking point? No, literally the opposite. But you need to, there's such a piece in all of this where you're like, you definitely need to kind of allow it to happen. And I think it's that slowing down, which in today's world feels foreign. So why do you, kind of going into that element of slowing down, flipping that on its head, why do you think people so often try to rush the process?
Yeah. It's such a great point. And I've got kind of 2 words for that: social media. I think that, to be completely honest, I think the damage that social media has done to what we perceive as normal, I think is devastating. I think that, now look, I'm actually probably branch out more than just injury recovery here. I think, I can branch out because I do feel really passionate about this, because whilst I've experienced it in a micro environment, a cosm that, I can sit here all day and say that influencers are posting themselves hip thrusting 200 kilos the day after an ankle injury. And you're like, well, hang on a minute here. Like, what about your audience who might be young girls or boys? They're going to want to do the same thing. And it's just crazy. So speaking more broadly, I think the idea is that social media has painted this idea that patience is somehow a failure. I think that social media has painted this idea that you're not allowed to slow down, because all you ever see is literally everyone's 1%. How often is someone ever going to post a Strava run onto their social media, page, if they feel a bit, I didn't run that quick, or I don't want people seeing that? I'm sure that must happen all the time. But it doesn't just happen in the world that I'm talking about of injuries. God, it happens in relationships. That's a whole different podcast issue. But what dating apps has done to the population, the constant idea of accelerating, of speed, of choice, of everything, it's just 100 miles an hour. And I just feel that, more broadly speaking across everyone, is that you feel like you have to be exceptional just to fit in, even though for so many of us, doing more, as I mentioned in injury recovery, is actually just something that's going to push us back harder. It's like the more you're knocking against the wall, the more you're knocking against it, the harder it's going to push back. I think no matter why is that I think people sometimes, again, I'm not saying it's that necessarily their fault, and it's something that Tom of 6 months ago to a year ago probably would have thought something similar. And that it's that sometimes it really is okay, genuinely is okay to slow down, because it's shoved down our throats that we have to do more. Is that there's constantly next challenge. And I spoke to this physio the other day, and he mentioned that, for example, in injury recovery, even as far as 2 to 3 years ago, let alone what it was like 5 to 6 years ago, no one would have known how quickly Sia Khaleesi came back from an ACL injury. No one would have known how quickly Antoine Dupont came back. However, all we can see now is their exact process. They come back in this many days. So now if you're a kid playing rugby, you go, oh, well, I need to get back in that time, even though it's so unrealistic. And it's, as you said, mentioned reality. We don't know what his reality was. We have no idea what his situation was. And yet we compare ourselves to them. And I think there's been like a lack. I mean, look, I can only speak from a male perspective, and I know it's necessary to do with gender stereotypes, but, in light of that Manosphere documentary being released, it's that, I mean, whilst they're not saying it themselves, all those characters there, all of them are pushing the opposite of slowing down, as far as I can see anyway. All I can see is these people pushing to do harder, to do more, make more money, do this and that. And look, I think genuinely the idea of working hard, I think most people work hard. I think most people, when they're passionate about something, will work hard. It just seems that there's a lack of role models pushing this idea that, slow down, be gentle. It's okay to just take a breath. And you compound that lack of role models with social media in my world of injury recovery, but also, again, relationships, businesses, make money quick, go viral on social media. And it's like, my God, like, it's just drowning in this like currency of, speed. And I think that I was very lucky to do an amazing interview with this girl called Gemma, who runs a wellness page and some movement for Parkinson's, and a really amazing kind of woman. And she just went, yeah, like that patience has become this, boring, negative mindset. But actual fact, for so many of us, for me, it was forced upon me, and I've had to learn that way. But if I hadn't had this injury, I would hope more than anything that I would have learned this, that sometimes it's genuinely okay to slow down. And the people who say otherwise, whether it's your friends or family or whatever, it's like, if they truly don't recognize that you're allowed to slow down your situation, then they're not beneficial. They're not helpful for you. Like, I mean, I'm sure that there's friends that I probably haven't spent as much time or spoken to because of my injury, but then my slowing down hasn't interacted with their life trajectory. Now, look, all sorts of reasons, and it's not a great example, but it's that idea that you are genuinely okay to slow down. And I think that can actually question that, why do people not slow down? I think we've had it instilled in us through relationships and social media. So in the realm of relationships and fitness, in the fitness industry, and injuries and that kind of thing, and the lack of role models in that, combined with what the other side's saying, it's kind of no wonder that this is going on.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's probably two things that I've written a few things down on kind of this, and like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think there's very few things that are like objectively good or bad. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of social media that is good, but I'm also like, there is a lot
100%. Yeah, yeah.
is on the negative side, or could be deemed negative, let's say. And I think one of the issues, probably, I really like the dating app example. I think that was a really interesting way to put it as well. It's like the conditioning, but it's also like look at the wider process of like ability to do it now, do it quick. You know, the amount of time. Like, is it any wonder that I have a struggle with, say, relationship with money when how many things have I signed up to sign your next 5 online clients in the next 7 days, your next 10K in the next 30 days? Just arbitrary metrics, all about bravado, dick swinging, and oh, look at this.
Yes, it's alpha male mentality. Yeah,
Exactly. And like, I can see how people and I had like fallen into that, and that's cool. Like, you've got to get to a point where, similar to yourself, if I said the phrase "show myself compassion" even a year ago, I would be there.
yeah, cringe. Yeah, like, oh, what are you doing?
Loser. What you got on? Oh, like,
Yeah,
I'm just rigging myself for it. And
yeah,
I felt so yeah, like
yeah,
you almost need that level of introspection. But I think coming back onto it and kind of looking into it a little bit deeper, it's also like there's in the dopamine of slowing down and getting these deeper introspections and this different level of work. Like, the dopamine is so delayed. Whereas I can pick up this little thing here, my phone, and I can sit there and I can essentially just cheap dopamine scroll. The analogy that I would give to it, like, I hypothetically, for, let's say an arbitrary metric of £50, how many cheeseburgers could I get from McDonald's? Hey, every now and then, nothing wrong with a cheeseburger from McDonald's. But if that's all I'm going to for my dopamine,
yeah,
versus what about if I saved that 50 quid and I went and got a banging steak? You're a Worcester boy,
yeah,
went to Ants. Yeah, like, I sit here and be like, oh, well, which one would I rather have? I'd rather sit and wait and have that really nice steak.
yeah.
But it's so accessible. Even if at 3 a.m. I can go and get a cheeseburger because it's the most accessible thing. It's there. It's on the tip of your fingers. And like, the other thing as well, the other thing I take, and I used to be so guilty of it, is this idea of like hacks, like, and it's like top 5 hacks, my hacks, this cheap, this, and it's
Yeah,
corner. Like, and there's no actual like depth, reason, or meaning behind it. And I don't know about you, but that particularly idea of hacks, like hacks, life hacks, things like that. Now, objectively, if I ironically went back on to say TikTok or Instagram, for example, and I typed in life hacks, now some of them like might just be actually helpful bits of information that I wouldn't have actually known about in the first place. I might be like, oh, is there a better way for me to clean the air fryer than
to
just
poach your eggs?
Is there a different way of doing it? Like, that's not, to me, that's not a hack. That's like, okay, it's actually a better strategy for me to use. I think there's a difference between that and like, all power to people that would go out and find, is there a better, more efficient, more cost-effective way of doing something? I think that's a very, very different point to them being like, I'm doing hacks just because I want to cut loads of corners. Because fundamentally, that's what you're saying. Whether we like it or not, that's fundamentally the discussion that you're having there. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I do. I think there's kind of 2 things that kind of came to mind there that really stood out to me. The first one, just where you mentioned at the start, and it does link to the second, was that the idea that there is so much good on social media. I think that's what burns us so much, is that, God, there's so many great accounts out there. I mean, there's the injury psychologist there. There's one who does ACL rehab recovery. It's like, there are so many good accounts out there, right? But it just gets drowned by this negative comparison. I actually attended a talk. Again, look, I'm not a psychologist. As the whole niche of my kind of page brand, I still don't really want to call it, but this idea that I am more someone who's lived it and someone who knows I know what it's like to live it, not what it's to teach about it, if that makes sense. So, like, I'm not a professional sportsman physio. I'm just the one who's been in the trenches. and they mentioned there's an injury psychologist and he's a professional psychologist, did something with his company, and they said that like a webinar, and they were like, if you can compare, because we're going to compare, and no one's saying we can't compare. We're humans. We're going to compare. I mean, I still luckily I'm still the tallest in my family, but you're going to compare. But yeah, my older brother's not too happy about it, but you're going to compare. But it's like, if you're going to compare, let's compare upwards. Let's not compare downwards. And this is what majority of social media tries to make you do, which is compare downwards. I've done this. I'm back at the gym at 6 weeks. I'm back doing this. Look at me. Look what you're not doing. Okay. And look, then on the one hand is how you think about it, of course. On the other hand, I do think it's the nature of social media and the beast that it is today. But in terms of thinking about it, when they mention this idea of comparing upwards and kind of like, to me, that kind of, it sounds like, I love my film and TV. I've got Peaky Blinders posters up in the Lord of the Rings place somewhere, but it's like, and I talk about injury recovery now and kind of like that second point you said, but it's the idea that if you're going to compare upwards, use them to inspire you. If you see these accounts out there, use them to inspire your own recovery. If I see someone in the gym at 10 weeks and they're phrasing it correctly, they're saying, look, this is what I'm doing. Okay, right. How can I get to that point? What decisions can I make to get there rather than, oh, fuck, I've got to get there. Oh, God, oh, sorry, the language, but yeah, oh, shit, they got to get there. That's why I went down to the gym, even though what I should have been doing is, oh, it's possible to get there. What positive decisions can I make with my body today to give me the best chance of getting there then? And let's go back to your point of dopamine. And it's that, I brought up the Lord of the Rings idea, is that can be anything. Like for me, the character of Aragorn is unbelievably inspiring. Or, I don't know, I'm a massive fan of my anime. I love Attack on Titan, these shows, and the main characters, all they're inspiring, and because they're inspiring because they're gentle, they're heroic, they're all these kind of things. And it's like, even though it's nothing to do with injury recovery, the themes that they present and portray are things that or the Dark Knight, Rise is an excellent one, where I have that image of Bruce Wayne climbing out of the well. You know, it's nothing to do with injury recovery, but the idea that it's one step at a time, we can get there, the light at the end of the tunnel. I just think that, you know, going back to that dopamine, it's the idea that, okay, and I can speak about recovery first, that again, that's something that was forced on me. That, okay, the short-term dopamine is an escape. The short-term dopamine is, look, and I understand that sometimes the idea of just watching those films and you know, having that cheeseburger, as you rightly said, sometimes it is necessary. Sometimes it really is important. We're never going to, again, lifestyle balance, I will never ever dismiss that. But in a more broader sense, the idea that, you know, straight away I can just drown my brain in dopamine, or I can, you know, with the diet stuff and then like, you know, Tinder and Hinge and these places, everything's so accessible that, going back to the whole point that we said about slowing down, is that statement so true, is that it's not popular. It wouldn't be popular for you to not go and get that burger. It would be the boring thing to do. It would be, I'm just going to wait and grab this. But in actual fact, it means so much more to you because you have waited. The idea of cutting corners, you can't with injury. And I think that's why I've kind of had such a change. I think it's why things have changed so much, and why my sense of identity has changed, because I haven't been allowed to cut corners. Not one part of my recovery have I been allowed to cut corners, because the times that I tried to cut corners have just made me worse. So it's like, well, stop doing it. Okay, well, it's almost like there's something in not cutting corners. There's almost like there's something in that you should probably look at and like obviously apply to the rest of your life. And I think it's something that I'm trying to do more of. And I'm as I keep saying, like, I still have those days. Goodness me, like I have those days when it gets bad, it gets hard, and like trying to escape into that dopamine of TikTok and might be video games, or I don't know what it is, but it's the idea of just trying to escape from. And look, as we said, of course, there's times where that can be really beneficial and helpful to someone. But I think you translate into my kind of wider life, that I think that is something that I'm really trying to implement. The idea that, you know, that delayed dopamine, just that, because you know it doesn't work in case of injury recovery, let's also apply that to our rest of our life. And that doesn't mean you can't have a pint down the pub with your mates. That doesn't mean you can't, you know, I don't know, smash that cake, or smash that, I don't know, pack of cookies. But the idea that, okay, just have that balance, have that the kind of nuance, and learn that, okay, if I don't punish yourself, of course don't punish yourself. But it's the idea that you're allowed to do that and you're allowed to slow down. These things can exist together.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And when you were talking there, is like, it's almost like the feedback loop, and that's ultimately how we get hooked on these like cheap dopamine how easy is it for you to pick up your phone and scroll on yeah, exactly. How easy is that? And all you do is this, and then you keep doing that, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Hinge, whatever that dopamine loop is. And like, don't get me wrong, like it's not my world anymore, but when you got a Tinder, like that's like, haha,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but yeah, it's true.
let's go, like that. Let's go, like that's really cool.
Your worth being tied to like this sense of hit on a stream, and it's the same with likes and followers, and it's like, well, why?
It's literally a slight movement of your right finger to the right, like, and that's what we get so caught up in that situation. Now, I think almost with when you were saying about like the injury, you can't cut corners. And the first thing I thought is, well, you can, but I'm also like, feedback loop is probably a lot quicker than, okay, well, I missed the gym one day. Even, whatever diet protocol or whatever.
Yeah.
I go and buy a tub of ice cream, a bag of cookies, and some chocolate.
Sounds unbelievable.
There and there. Brilliant. Right. Doing that once isn't going to happen. But it's when that becomes more of a thing,
100%.
Missing more often. Like, again, that's where that starts to become a problem. Don't get me wrong. Individual incident, not an issue. Repeated incident, problemo. Now, the thing that I take with like a bit of a pinch of salt, like that feedback loop is really slow. You kind of say you let your nutrition drop. Yeah, you might put on a few pounds, but when that few pounds becomes a stone, or using a diet, for example, you're like, oh my God, that's so much. Like, what went wrong? And fundamentally, it was just one day you'd be like, oh, fuck it, that's it.
Yeah.
But I think with the injury, like where it's quite interesting from the injury point of view, like the stakes are a bit higher. And I think you get that feedback a lot quicker, where you don't, like, you objectively aren't getting better. Your condition may be worsening. You're experiencing high levels of pain. Like, I think those three things there are probably quite good reasons to be like, actually, no, I do need to go and do my physio, even though it's shit, even though it's boring. Whether you like it or not, like, you have to go and do that to get better objectively. And then I think the other side to kind of like that as well, like the consequence is so much more than like,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Like injury context, like the fact, like the damage that, say, you not going about the recovery in the right way. Obviously, you're in a position now, both your feet, having issues with. So that's like the level of, like, the stakes are so much higher. So it's so much harder for you to be like, oh, I can't be asked.
Well, I think just on that, if you don't mind me kind of cutting in, is that, it's funny actually, because I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, but I think you're right. They're two slightly different camps. Or understand, because the stakes are far higher. Look, if I try and, God, I mean, I haven't run in over a year now, but if I tried to go for a run, I don't know what would happen to both feet. I genuinely don't know what would happen. But anyway, obviously I'm not going to do that. And it's the idea that, and the first thing that came to mind when I talk about injury is that, look, of course, making the right decision every single day, in theory, would be me, let's say it's my foot. And look, this isn't physiology, whatever the word is, great physio advice. I don't know what the exact advice is, but argument's sake, the idea that ice 10 minutes, rest, elevate, ice 10, rest, elevate, like the most ridiculous, like, only eating proteins. And I don't know what the exact physiological thing is. Sleeping correct, exactly 8 to 10 hours every single day, all that kind of stuff. But that's not realistic. And that actually almost this idea that, of course, control what you can control, but don't go so as far. Use that nuance and that balance that, well, hang on a minute, don't shut myself off then from other people. Is me going to grab a coffee with my friend the absolute optimal thing I can do? You know what? It's probably not. However, how good is that going to be for my mental health? Brilliant. Your mental health is by far the most important thing you can ever look after, in my opinion. Now, I used to be the person that would go, oh, well, your physical health leads to mental health. That one's first. But what I've learned is not only are they disgustingly intertwined, that one simply leads to the other, sometimes one has to prioritize the other. Sometimes, going for that coffee, yes, that isn't the perfect exact solution for your exact problem. Look, it still comes into that, what decision can I make to make it better? It's still under that bracket. Of course it is, don't get me wrong. It's not trying to run a marathon on a broken foot, but is it the absolute optimal? No. But is it looking after my mental health? Absolutely. But then some other days it's, okay, do I want to go to that event? You know what? I don't feel comfortable because I don't think my foot will be able to manage the expectations of that event. So I'm not going to go. And it's the fact that I just feel they can work together. And that, like you said, they're like cutting corners. Or sorry, but we were saying there that, sometimes, and it's about balance and nuance, is that I just think, okay, is what I'm doing beneficial for my situation and my foot? If one day, as you said, it's going for that coffee with that friend when, you're on crutches, and yeah, it can be quite hard to move around, but you put a chair up, you put your foot up, you're in control of your surroundings. You're not making it worse. And you're doing things to help you expand your identity, help you get control over the situation because things feel normal. I think what mentioned there about doing things, I think in normal life, it looks like smashing that dominoes every single night. But then I think the way that looks in recovery sense is trying to go for that coffee, that drink with that friend, but then not looking after your foot alongside that. That's the best way I can think it transcribes. So that, again, smaller scale, but bigger consequence. Whereas in the normal world, outside, like everything else alongside injury recovery, it's the fact that, okay, if I go out and have a Domino's one night, it's completely fine. I'm in control of the situation. It's something that clearly I would have wanted it. It's helping your mental health. Might be your friends, might be your family. There's so much more. Again, that idea we said earlier, not holding yourself accountable ridiculously to the stupid standard of obscene perfection every single day. I'm allowed to have as easy as a Domino's just because I don't see my influencer having it, the person I follow. I can absolutely guarantee that they will be vice, whatever the word is, behind the scenes. They just don't choose to show it. It's 1% of what they do. And I just think that this idea of nuance and that two things can exist at the same time. So in terms of injury recovery, you can prioritize, as I said earlier, make the best possible decision you can make for your foot, in my case, my foot, for your injury, for your physical side of things. And that can apply to the mental as well. But there's also a case where sometimes, as long as we're in control of our environment and we're not making it worse. You mentioned the idea of plussing, even if it's a day that's plus 0.0001, but mentally, we've seen our friends, we know we're not alone anymore. We're feeling rejuvenated. We feel like ourselves. That then tomorrow, the next day, it won't be a +1. It'll be a +5 because we're mentally in that space. So I think it's really interesting you say that. Actually, I never really thought of the idea that injuries is so much like the stakes I do think are far higher, and health obviously is far higher. But with that comes more something slightly more nuance, and it's just balance. It really is just balance. It's like balance, but while we can make the right decision within that balance.
Yeah, mate, totally. And I think that's a really cool place to start wrapping things up. So kind of what's next for you and what's next for Rebuild as a whole?
It's a great question. I think, so for me, it's basically try and put into practice everything that I've talked about. It's all well and good me saying that. And obviously look, and that's like, it's another thing living it. And I think it's something I'm learning as well, that there's some days I'll post something and I won't feel anything like what I felt. And all that does is completely reaffirm this idea that it is not true. What you see on social media, it is not true. And as the more we can accept that it isn't exactly what we think it is, the better we can understand what it is they're actually telling us. And that's the best way I've learned to phrase that. So right now, it's basically that my exact thing is, I think next Wednesday, I don't know when this will come out, but on a certain Wednesday, I will be seeing my consultant, hopefully take the steps to start having the surgery done. From there, it's a hell of a long road recovery again, and hopefully both feet will start. I'm trying to eliminate the things that I can eliminate, as the left foot is something that it stayed around for longer than I think any of us first thought, but it's something that hopefully will be quite a simple fix when we get to it. And that then frees me up all of my energy to go on the right foot again, right now, this time, round 2, this time we're going to get it. This time, and look, what success looks like, I don't know. And I feel comfortable not knowing what that is. I don't know what success looks like to me and my identity. But I'm comfortable not knowing that, because particularly in the case of sport, I have this vision in my head of sitting on a beach or standing on a beach in New Zealand. Lord of the Rings is filmed in New Zealand. Really want to go there. And this idea that, and I was robbed of the chance to go there when I went to Australia last time, because I was on crutches for so long. And this idea, there's a sugar attack on time, and this idea of freedom, and there's a character there who stands out to the water, and it's the idea that, look, there's all sorts of nuances about what his thing of freedom is, but the context is the idea that he's free on the beach. And I just have this image of sitting on the beach, being there and knowing that I've done as hard work I'm impatient. I've been all these kind of things, and that's my vision of success, is kind of being there. I don't know when that would be. I haven't got a timeline. I don't know if I don't know if I'll ever be able to run again, just because of the context of the injury. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if that version of Tom is playing rugby, but I know that when I'm at that spot, and it's not like, there's nothing like, I say objective, there's no like definitives about that. There's no like, I have to run a 5K in that time. I have to run a 10K. I've had to run the marathon, cross the finish line at an Ironman. It's like, no, none of that. It's just that we're here, we're present. And that's what like success looks like to me. And it's really helpful is that when there's bad days come along, it's not that I'll never run that half marathon. It's, oh no, I will still get to that beach. I just don't know when that's going to be. So it's taken a long time to kind of get to that point, but it's definitely something that works for me. And it's just taken away, kind of what I said earlier, the sheer pressure of having to be back at a certain time. It's like, no, we're slow. We'll do this. We don't know what I'll look like in that end. So living with that uncertainty, it's like, right, palms open. It's going to be there. I haven't lost anything. Giving myself that space to kind of be there and grow without the pressure of like losing something. So that's what I meant to say earlier, and I just kind of jogged my memory with that now. And it's personal to me. That's my version of what it looks like. I can't remotely push that on anyone else, but it helps. It almost makes it easier for me because it's me. It's my identity that's changed. So and I'm understanding that more and more. So that's that kind of one side. And then the future for Rebuild is a really good question. Actually, one I've been asking myself a lot. I think I don't like the idea of sounding arrogant, but it's grown more than I thought it would, to be honest. I really didn't expect it to kind of grow as much as it has done. I think that more than anything, it kind of shows me there's this space to talk about this kind of stuff. And like the same with your podcast and what you do, it's the idea that there actually is so much discourse and dialogue that people want to have that's not 100 miles an hour, that's not, and that we're not alone. Like, you set this up. Obviously, I'm very slightly more new to this, but the idea that there's so many people who want to talk about this. And I do think there is a big societal shift away from the absolute pace of social media. So yeah, the future, it's a good question. I think I really want to explore speaking into schools. I've done that a few times. I think
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. And I think that more than anything, because I think that age group, particularly between 14 to 18, if there's a way that we can kind of install these slowing down messages, of course you can work hard. No one's saying you can't work hard, but what we're saying is just don't beat yourself up when you have to slow down. That's what I think more than anything.
The hard work is, they are, medium-sized sprints. Like, let's say that, for a course of a couple of weeks, you might need to push really hard, but then you don't have to keep that speed, that momentum up.
Yeah.
Once the job's done, by all means, take your foot off the gas. Like we were talking before, like big thing, big project, big thing we've been working on, big thing that's taking up a lot of time, effort, energy, emotion. And like this week, I'm almost like, there's part of it was like, oh, I feel like I've not like extracted everything out of this week. And I'm like, yeah, but of course you wouldn't have done. You're actually,
yeah, it's impossible.
Being really stupid thinking that you can.
Yeah.
So almost like honoring that feeling within yourself.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's true.
Very hard thing to say. Like honoring how you feel and like the actual like what's the word I'm looking for? Not the gravitas, the kind of like reality of the situation. Is something very different. But mate, I think what you're doing is really cool, and like I love it when I see someone like banging their drum, like banging their drum to the beat in their field. Like you can tell that you have so much kind of passion and like want for. I think it's not necessarily about you; it's about the message being successful.
100%.
And the impact being there, which like that's so refreshing to see. So yeah, mate.
Oh, thank you. No, I do really appreciate that. I think I really appreciate you saying that, because I think that, look, obviously my journey is technically the spine of what's happened, but it's not. I think very, very quickly shifted. I think because it's just like I'm so passionate about how much I despise what I see online. I think more than anything, to be honest, I think because I've lived both sides. It's that because, like, and I hate the idea. I'm sure you hate it as well. It's like thinking to be about, about me, but it's like, because I've been on one side of the journey about loving that content and, benefiting from that side, the working harder, the locking in. Yeah, I love that. Almost been, oh, why they're slowing down? Really? Like, come on. To then suddenly this other side of like, oh my God, like, wow, like this is just where the goalposts have now completely changed. Like, and I think that I just feel so passionate that I feel that people are being let down. And that's why I love what you do, is that these conversations deserve to be opened up. And I think one thing that stings me a lot is that, again, I know it's not to do with gender roles, but like, and that's why I'm saying, the Manifear documentary came out, that somehow that this idea of masculinity and being a man is, locking in, doing more, pushing harder. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, fuck off. Like, no, it's not. Like, that stings me in the context of injury recovery. Again, I'm not getting into gender roles, but like what I see for these young boys, as I can only speak for myself, going through this and seeing this lock-in culture, so that when it then comes to injury recovery, they must not know what to do, understandably, because they've been let down by the dialogue that you have to push harder. Because then all of a sudden they're not just talk about identity, they're not just not themselves, they're also not a man, apparently, because they're not owning up to how painful it actually is. Even though, as we established earlier, the more we can buy into that, the more control we feel. So look, it's just, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. It's just like, on a number of reasons, it's meaningful to me. I just think more than anything, I want us to be there for people if they need it. I think, because that loneliness is so real. So I think that is that, like I said, when I did the presentation, I said, look, like, I actually hope none of you have to look at this. I really genuinely hope none of you ever have to follow, message, comment, whatever it is. But know that if you did, I know that young me would have liked to know that there's something out there.
Yeah, mate, amazing. What an incredible place to round up. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Mate, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.